All right, guys, parts are all, I got them all cleaned. There's a couple different ways you can clean it. You can do soap and water. I would use like Dawn, it helps cut grease, but if you have shock oil that you have to get off, especially on the outside, you can use like a nitro cleaner, like Nitro Tech. You could also use, if you wanted to, you could use brake cleaner. The only problem with brake cleaner is that brake cleaner can, if you spray too much of it, it can start stripping colors out of your aluminum. So depending on the strength of your brake cleaner, it is probably the best cleaner to use. It'll cut any grease away very quickly. All right, so for reassembly again is actually quite quick and quite easy. It's just literally a matter of your O-rings. The only O-ring I am not going to replace is going to be the O-ring for the preload setting. There's really no need to change that. It still has, when you turn it, it still has it's not loose. It still has some drag on it, so that's how you want it. So to start off, what you want to do is just lube your O-rings with that green slime or grease that you have lying around. What's going to help do is going to help the O-rings to seat, and also it's going to keep them from possibly tearing when the piston goes through. So you would take the first O-ring and you would slide it right inside the tube, making sure that it's all the way at the bottom. Take your nylon spacer, slide that in. Then you're going to take your second O-ring, lube that up, and you're going to take it and you're going to place it down into the shock body. Try to wipe as much of the oil off the shock body as possible. You're then going to take your shock cap. Inside this cap there is a little plastic washer. Normally it stays. If it does happen to fall out, there's two, I'll just take it out. There's two sides. There's a skinny side and a wider side. You'll see, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see the taper. The one with the smaller taper points down towards the end, so you'd be able to see it when it's in there. It's a flush fit. So take your cap and slide it on. Oh, I almost forgot one crucial step. See, I rushed. There's an O-ring that has to be installed onto the shock body and goes down into a little groove, and that's what this cap seals against. So you're going to take that and screw it down. You do not want to compress it all the way. You don't want to compress the O-rings yet. You just want to keep them from pushing out. Next, you're going to take your piston. I like to take a little bit of the green slime and put it on the end of the piston into the rod. That way when it pushes through the O-rings, the threads of the piston of the rod don't try to tear the O-ring and make a bad seal. So you're just going to take your piston and push it through your shock body all the way through. Run it up and down a couple times to make sure there's no binds, and then just tighten the cap down. Again, making sure that there's no binds. You want it to run smooth. And just take and just wipe off as much of that grease as you can off the shock body. Next, you're going to take your shock cap or your end. You're going to thread it on. You take your pair of pliers, your tool, whatever you're going to use, slide it on, and you're going to tighten that down. Be careful when you tighten this down all the way. What I like to do is when I get to the end, I just give it one turn, just so basically at the end of the thread you'll see it. I like to do it so that this stop right here, where the preload clip, or sorry, the spring catch at the end goes, I like to line it up with that tool. So, or so it's opposite. show you what I mean. There you go. So it's opposite the flat spots. It's right in the middle of the flat spots. So, now that's all done. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your bladder. Again, make sure, I know I keep on harping on it, make sure front goes to front. The non-marked bladder goes to the front. The bladder with the R goes to the back. Always do it. There's a concave size, and then there's a tapered side, or a convex, or I'm sorry, the side that is tapered, you want that going down towards the shock body. So the flat side, the side that looks like a dish, you want that up towards the cap. So basically, like that. So it acts as a bladder. Next, you're going to take your shock oil of choice. Whatever you decide to fill the shock oil with, whether it's, 40, 30, 50, 20, 10, whatever weight you decide to use, just make sure it's silicone shock fluid, not petroleum shock fluid. All you need is silicone shock fluid for the Losi 5, which actually makes it, number one, it makes it cheaper to rebuild your shocks. And plus, I find it, me personally, I find it easier to rebuild shocks using silicone fluid versus petroleum fluid. But that's just my take on it. All right. So take your shock, take your fluid. You basically want to pour the fluid in until it's about 3/4 of the way up the shock body. Once it's about 3/4 of the way up the shock, you want to run the piston up and down to remove air bubbles. And what I like to do is I like to slowly add fluid until I go about 1/8 of an inch from the top, or basically at full compression, the fluid is just almost spilling out. That's how I normally fill my shocks. Some of you guys might do it a little differently. There we go. It's running up and down. Now with your piston at the fully compressed state, take your shock cap. I'm trying to get this on camera, which I'm not. You can either set your bladder down over the top of the shock or do like I did and put it inside of the cap. Thread that guy down. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your tool, your nut holder, and then you're going to take your other, and you're just going to sock this down. You might see a little bit of oil come out. There's a relief cap, a relief hole at the bottom of the cap. You might see a little bit of fluid come out of the back of there. That's perfectly fine. Just when you're tightening it down, it's going to happen. All right, wipe that off and then check. Make sure you have no air bubbles whatsoever in the shock. So, there you go. All right, that's nice. And last step, one of the last steps, is to take your shock boot. Now, there's different ways you can do of getting this on. Me personally, what I like to do is I like to take a little bit of the slime and just put it on the end of the shock eyelet and just kind of rub it around a little bit. Then I take my boot, and with that lube, it actually helps that the lube helps the boot just kind of slide over the end cap. It's a little methodical sometimes. Oh, there we go. Once it's on, Just take your boot, push it over that cap. Now, take your spring, slide it over, compress the spring, and then take the spring retainer, and then you have one fully rebuilt shock. Front shock for the Losi 5T. Rear is exactly the same procedure, you know, just shock's a tiny bit bigger. All right, guys, with all that said, we'll see y'all later. Hope you enjoyed the video, and all right, later, guys.